Hi, my name is Devyani. This is Between Sessions, a weekly roundup of news, rumors, and racing stories shaping Formula One. This week, all 11 teams took to Bahrain for the first official test, and everyone is playing hot potato regarding who is the fastest and who has the best engine. Let's start at the newsstand. Lewis Hamilton says not having a permanent race engineer will be detrimental to him for his 2026 campaign, and all I have to say is duh. It can't exactly be ideal to have to temporarily learn all about a new person and how they work and how you communicate to only then have to do it once again a couple races into the season. It does feel like that would put you on the back foot a bit. And my question is, does Ferrari have a shortage of race engineers? Is that why they weren't able to pair him with one? I mean, right now he's going to be working with Carlos Santi, who I believe was Kimi Räikkönen's old race engineer, so someone with experience. But is it the same thing about how nobody wants to move to Maranello? And that's why they're having trouble finding talent. Because that used to be a thing. Nobody wanted to move to Maranello to develop the car and whatever. They wanted to stay in England and they would commute. What's the problem, Ferrari? What's the holdup here? Anyway, Fernando Alonso says that we need to be expressing caution when it comes to the Honda engine. And I think he obviously means expectation-wise and not to expect that they're the quickest. And again, my question for Fernando Alonso is, are you having PTSD to the last time you worked with Honda? Are you thinking about the McHonda days very often? Are we going to have another GP2 engine type moment? If so, it's theater. Great. It's just having to dampen all the expectations that everybody had for Adrian Newey at Aston Martin so quickly into this process seems, well, disappointing. But again, who knows? Lance Stroll is out there saying that they are 4 seconds off the pace. So that's quite something. Max Verstappen has found himself in the hot seat as he aired out a lot of his thoughts about the 2026 cars. And I'm going to be reading everybody's statements in full, so I'm going to be reading them out as to not take anything out of context, as many outlets and headlines did this week. So let's begin. Max Verstappen was asked what he thought about the 2026 cars, and this is what he said. As a driver, the feeling is not very Formula One-like. It feels like Formula E on steroids, but the rules are the same for everyone, so you have to deal with that. And that's not my problem because I'm all for that. Equal chances, I don't mind that. But as a pure driver, I enjoy driving flat out. And at the moment, you cannot drive like that. There's a lot going on. A lot of what you do as a driver in terms of input has a massive effect on the energy side of things. And for me, that's just not Formula One. Maybe it's better to drive in Formula E, right? Because that's all about energy efficiency and management. That's what they stand for. Driving wise, it's not so fun, but at the same time, I know what is at stake with the team, with our own engine, and seeing the excitement of the people. Of course, when I sit in the car, I will always give it my very best. They know that, but the excitement level is not so high. I mean, the livery is great, but the car looks great. Honestly, the proportion of the car looks good. That's not the problem. It's everything else that is a bit, for me, anti-racing. Probably people will not be happy with me for saying this right now, but I am outspoken. And why am I not allowed to say what I think of my race car? I can't help that. I mean, I didn't write the regulations. If it was, I think not up to political aspects of making a regulation, I think the car, probably the engine, whatever, would have looked very different. But yeah, that's how it is. So clearly not very happy. And it seems that a lot of drivers echo these sentiments to a certain degree, but don't want to say it. A lot of them were, actually, we'll get there. The first response everyone's talking about is Lando Norris. And they took the one bit of him saying, oh, well, if he doesn't like this, he can just stop. He can do anything else. He doesn't have to be here. We get paid millions of dollars. But I'll read you the entire Lando Norris quote. Lando says, I had a lot, and let's be clear here. All the journalists were taking Max's quote and then taking those anti-racing, the Formula E on steroids thing, and telling it to drivers and then asking them to react. Anyway, Lando Norris says, I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, if he wants to retire, he can retire. Formula One changes all the time. Sometimes it's better to drive. Sometimes it's not as good to drive. But yeah, we get paid a stupid amount of money to drive, so you can't really complain at the end of the day. Any driver can go and find something else to do, It's not like he has to be here. Any driver has to be here. It's a challenge. It's a good, fun challenge. For the engineers, for the drivers, it's different. You have to drive in a different way and understand things differently and manage things differently. But you still get to drive cars and travel the world and have a lot of fun. So nothing to complain about. He added that I don't expect Max to go out and not give a shit, you know? He's going to try and win. Max is never going to not try. He's just not going to smile as much. I guess that might be the case. It certainly doesn't feel as quick as the past few years, and it doesn't handle as perfectly, but I'm sure if he came into this and this was the F1 car he started driving, then he probably would say it's amazing. Comparing to the older cars, it doesn't feel as pretty and beautiful to drive, but it's still good. And you fast forward to the end of this year and look ahead to the next year already, we're going to be a lot quicker by then. Anyone and everyone can make their own opinions, have their own opinions, and decide what they want to do. No one should complain about that or be upset about it. Every driver has their own opinions. He didn't like it, and I like it. He kind of came all the way around from saying, you know, we can't complain about things, and he can just retire if he doesn't want to drive it, coming around to, you know, everyone has their own opinion, which is true. I think everyone is allowed to express their own opinion on this. It doesn't have to be, oh, I don't agree with this person's point, so we're obviously antithetical to each other's points, you know? But the thing here to remember is that Lewis, Fernando, Max have all spoken out against the new regulations. And there is this thought process that Formula One does not want these drivers going out and bashing these regulations, bashing these cars before the season even starts. That's not a good look, right? And when you have a couple world champions under your belt, so that's Max, Lewis, and Fernando, and now Lando, as world champions, they have a bit more clout. People also pay a lot more attention to everything they say, and they have the ability to kind of go against the grain a little bit, if you catch my drift. Anyway, Jeff Dodds, CEO of Formula E, slightly diabolical or cheeky with this one, messaged Max apparently saying, "You're in Bahrain, I'm in Jeddah. It's a quick flight. I'll go and get him if he wants. Open invitation. Come and drive the car. For the Gen 4 car, come and have a go. See what you think." We've had a lot of F1 drivers ask us about driving the Gen 4 car, and I'd love Max to just give us an honest point of view on it. Because 4-time world champion, you have to respect Max's view on anything relating to motorsport. First of all, I think Max Verstappen, his private jet, can get to Jeddah all by himself if he wanted to, Jeff Dodds. Anyway, do I think Max Verstappen's going to be driving a Formula E car anytime soon? Most likely not, but good try. I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? Charles Leclerc on Max's comments said, "I think that's a bit of an extreme statement, but I know Max and he can be quite black and white sometimes. Are these the most enjoyable cars I've ever driven? No. There are many things to improve." And the race's Scott Mitchell-Munn did say on the podcast that one driver told me that Max spoke for a lot of the drivers in terms of his criticism about the engines and what all that stuff is. A lot of the drivers won't say this because there's a little bit of desire to, shall we say, from F1 for drivers not to be going out and talking down the new rules massively. A lot of drivers want to respect that. So they're like, okay, Max, you can do the dirty talking for us. We are scared of F1. Which, again, if you're a backmarker driver, or if you're a rookie or a second year or whatever, you might not be as comfortable speaking out against these new rules that the FIA, the F1, everyone has been hyping up for so long. So I understand the sentiment. George Russell said, "As with anything in life, you can't tick every single box. There's more at stake. With these regulations coming into play, there's obviously a huge push of EVs from the EU and a big part of the likes of Audi to come in. So that's got to be a consideration. And nobody can argue that Formula One is in an amazing place currently. Of course, we want the best cars, the fastest cars, the best racing, but I don't know how you please everybody. As Lando said, we're privileged to be in this position. In all honesty, I just want to win. I guess for a driver who's won quite a bit recently, you do just want to have the best car and the most fun cars to drive. So yeah, Verstappen is welcome to go to the Nordschleife." Interrupting this for anybody who may be unfamiliar with the Nordschleife. As a motorsports fan, you will hear the terms Nürburgring, Nordschleife, often used sometimes interchangeably to describe the track itself, aka the Nordschleife, but basically, the Nürburgring is the entire motorsports complex located in a town in Germany called, you guessed it, Nürburgring, and I have been there. It is very beautiful. Anyway, point being is that when they were constructing the track in the 1920s, they built the Nordschleife and the Südschleife, so the North Loop and the South Loop, and you could use it as one big giant racetrack, or you could split it up into two separate ones, and Formula One raced in the Nordschleife from 1950s through the 60s and then part of the 70s, at which point it was becoming unsafe. Drivers were complaining, and the 1976 crash of Niki Lauda, the fiery dangerous one, kind of sealed the Nordschleife's fate as no longer being an F1 track. But In the 80s, because they wanted F1 to race at the Nürburgring, they built a separate, safer track, and it was called the Grand Prix track, right? And so Formula One raced there on and off. We had a bunch of German Grand Prix there. We had some European Grand Prix there. It was a whole thing. The last time I think we raced there was the Eiffel GP in 2020, but the Grand Prix track also kind of made the Südschleife go bye-bye, because when they were building it, they had to destruct part of the Südschleife, so that's not really in operation anymore. So now at the Nürburgring, you have the Nordschleife, the 13-mile long, feared and revered track, sometimes called the Green Hell a la Jackie Stewart, and then you have the Grand Prix track. But people talk about the Nordschleife a lot because it's really cool to race there. Back to what George Russell was saying, he said, of course we want the best cars, we want the fastest cars, but the fastest cars were the 2020 cars, and we were also saying that we want lighter cars, similar to the mid-2000s, and then in the mid-2000s they were probably saying they want slick tires and not grooved tires. We as drivers like to complain, and the truth is we're sort of one of 20 people who get to experience this, but I also appreciate, the sport. There's tens of millions of people watching and following, and just if you've got the best cars for us to enjoy doesn't mean it's going to give the best racing. And you can argue potentially the racing will be a bit more chaotic, but the spread from the top team to the back teams at the moment seems far larger than we expected. And ignoring his little he can go drive with the Nordschleife barb, this idea of who are these regulations for? Is the job of the regulations to provide the best and most fun cars for the drivers to drive? I mean, we know a lot of the motivation behind this regulation set was to entice, to lure automotive companies to Formula One. That's where that 50-50 of the combustion and the electric thing comes from, right? That's where getting rid of the MGU, that's where all this comes from. What are the motivations that led us to this? Is also important to understand why we're here. Fernando Alonso said the role of the driver is dying. In one of his media sessions, he was talking about how in the early 2010s in Bahrain, you could set up the car so that you basically go through turn 12 flat. But now with the battery and the saving energy, you basically withhold there a lot. You go 50 kph slower than you usually would at that corner so you can expend your battery elsewhere. And he was joking and saying, oh, you, aka the journalist, you could drive in the car there. You, the chef, could drive in the car there. He's being driven to madness. Lewis Hamilton is talking about the lifting and coasting on quali laps and how it's not really like F1 and it feels like GP2 cars. A lot of people are complaining about this. Even Esteban Ocon, who takes a much more measured approach than, say, Max Verstappen or Fernando Alonso, says, what did he say? Says, let's start with the positive side. It's a new challenge for all of us. And when I arrived in F1 10 years ago, we had more or less the same regulations, the same engine, and very similar tools. Now we have to learn everything from scratch. Is it the most fun to drive? Maybe not necessarily, but it's interesting to try and sort everything out with the engineers and get the most out of the situation. It's a completely different way of driving, right? Energy management is so crucial to this set of regulations that it's not always the driver difference. It's not really as much about cornering speeds and braking late. It's about when are you harvesting energy, when are you it's just a different way of driving. And are the drivers having the most fun doing that? I would argue, based on everything we're seeing and we're hearing, that yes, there's always going to be some aspect of energy management in Formula One, just like there's always going to be some type of tire management in Formula One. But maybe this cycle, this generation of cars has gone a bit too far in that area. But again, I don't know. My only way of gauging this is, what does it do to the racing? Does this make a more interesting product as a racing series? Is this going to be better for overtaking? Are we going to that's how I'm gauging this, right? I understand that the drivers might not love this, that the teams are annoyed about the engine compression ratio, and the FIA is no, these are all great, but I don't know until I see, I would say, at least 4 or 5 races at different tracks, with different characteristics and track profiles, to really get a sense of, okay, is this good for the sport? Is this good for me as a fan? And it's tea time, and in the latest saga of the F1 teams versus the 2026 regulations, we have the starting procedures. And we've known for a while that drivers are going to have difficulties with the starting procedures because of how complicated they are. Basically, they have to keep the turbo spooled for around 10 seconds to minimize turbo lag, and also they can't overcharge the battery. And again, these are like drivers from Lando Norris to Gabriel Orletto, like up and down the pecking order, have talked about how hard it's going to be. And especially for drivers at the back of the grid, are concerned about if they're going to have enough time once they reach their grid spot to even go through this process of the spooling turbo for 10 seconds. Like, think about Valtteri Bottas and his Australia penalty, his 5-place grid penalty that has to serve. Is he really going to have time to do all this? And so a lot of the F1 teams, McLaren especially, have talked about changing procedures and making it better for all the drivers so that we can either, guarantee the amount of time from which the final car gets their grid spot and the lights go out, or some other idea. There have been other ones on the table. But Ferrari and Fred Vasseur may be the obstacle, but it's not just like a crazy ego thing, okay? Fred Vasseur brought this up at like an F1 commission meeting a while ago, okay? He was like, this is going to be a problem. This turbo lag is going to be a problem. We should do something about it. And everyone said, no, it's not going to be an issue. Don't worry about it. Like, it's going to be fine. And Fred said, okay. And the thought process is now that Fred Vasseur and Ferrari have designed their cars in a way to minimize that turbo lag, so they don't have to do as much of the starting procedure complication stuff as everyone else does. George Russell hinted at, obviously he doesn't know because he's not, an engineer at Maranello, but he is thinking about Ferrari having a smaller turbo so they have less of this to do. And now Fred Vasseur is probably like, okay, I changed things. You said no, that we're not going to change anything about the starting procedure, so I went and designed my car in favor of that. And now you're getting here and realizing it's going to be a problem. Like, I already told you, no, I'm not letting you change it. No, that would mess everything up. And so it's understandable, but it's also being seen as a safety issue because, say, I don't know, a couple cars don't start, or they do start and they hit somebody in the back. Like, there's a lot of safety implications of this. It's time for the scroll stop, which is things on social media that made me stop scrolling. Number one is Adam Cooper, a freelance journalist, talking about George Russell's analogy. And this is the quote. He says, imagine you drive to the supermarket in your car and you get to the roundabout and you put it in third gear to drive around the roundabout. But then suddenly the person next to you puts it in first gear, in parentheses, makes screaming engine noise and revs it. It doesn't even matter what the rest of the quote says, but I need an audio clip of this because the concept of George Russell explaining the turbo and the gears and the issues with this engine stuff with an analogy about driving to the supermarket and then imitating the revs, I need to hear it ASAP. Okay. Number two, Liam Lawson was on this podcast. I think it was called Gypsy Tales, and I only watched about 60% of it. It was like 2 hours long. But the first thing I noticed, the reason I stopped scrolling when I saw a clip was because he was wearing a hat, which is not strange. Liam Lawson wearing a hat is not some strange anomaly we need to discuss, but the hat he was wearing said Erewhon Market on it. Now, I don't know where Liam Lawson lives or what he does in his free time, and I don't need to, but I did look up how much this Erewhon hat costs, and it costs $90 for it's not just a grocery store, it's a upscale American fancy grocery store in LA, right? And I just have a lot of questions as to how he obtained this. Like, was he in the checkout line at the Erewhon with his like $60 oxygenated water and saw this Erewhon merch like on this, like, how some people, they grab Dubai chocolate bars and they put them in their cart and then they check out and they're like, that Dubai chocolate bar was $13.55. What is going on? Did Liam Lawson have that same experience when he put this Erewhon Market hat into his cart? And then it was like, that's $90. What? Like, did it just appear? Did he just acquire it from somewhere? Did he order it online? Like, I just need to know what does he go to Erewhon to get? Are there specific things, or is he just doing all his grocery shopping there? I know F1 drivers make a lot of money, so I'm sure he can afford the Erewhon Market prices. But I want to know. I think it would be fun to have that discussion. Number 3, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli did this little sit-down interview thing on the Mercedes YouTube channel with 2 children, and George asked the little girl,
"How old do you think I am?"
46.
46! Oh my god, we did have words.
It's obviously a reminder that kids have no concept of age and time or anything like that. But my question is, if she thought that George Russell was 46, how old would she think Fernando Alonso is? 89? The Racing Bulls love affair with hash browns continues, and I think it is spreading throughout the F1 Threads admin spot, because I've been seeing Alpine post on Threads about the hash browns. And listen, I have nothing against hash browns. I'm just curious, how did this become a brand identifying symbol? Like, because now when I think about hash browns, I think about Racing Bulls. And I've never really had that with foods and Formula One teams where I'm like, oh yeah, this food is this team. It's time for the F1 hotline, and I didn't ask for questions this week, so I'm just doing some extra ones that I didn't get to from last week. Number 1, do you think the Red Bull drivers always have Red Bull in their Red Bull cans? And I mean, yes, like, the concept of the Red Bull employees in hospitality having to pour out all the Red Bull and then fill it with water or something is hilarious. I know people have said that they think that they have Red Bull in their drinks bottles, which, like the ones they drink after the race and stuff, which that seems strange to me. I think they would probably have electrolytes or whatever mixture their physio makes for them. But yes, in the little cans that they're always sipping on, I do think they have Red Bull in them. I think it would be strange if they didn't, because they could just have a Red Bull like big bottle with the branding on it and have water or whatever they wanted to drink in there, you know? They didn't have to have the little cans, you know? So I'm assuming when they have the little cans in their hands and they're sipping, they're actually drinking Red Bull. Although I've never seen them drink other flavors. Well, maybe they have. I always see them drinking the classic one. Okay, and the other question is, what is your dream track to go to? And the main dream track was Suzuka, which I went to last year for the Japanese Grand Prix. It was beautiful. Just if you're going to the Japanese Grand Prix, do not the Suzuka Ino station, oftentimes when you use Apple or even Google Maps, it tells you that you should get your ticket to go there, and that's fine on the way there. Typically, if you're taking the express train, on the way back, do not walk from Suzuka to Suzuka Ino station unless you have an actual ticket for that express train, because there's almost always an extremely long line, and because everyone walks there because it's closer, because they don't want to wait for the shuttles, they don't want to walk back to Shiroko, there are not enough trains from Suzuka Ino station. And I think the Japanese Grand Prix social media pages have even said that on their Instagram. What am I talking about? Anyway, Suzuka was my dream track. But my next dream tracks that I want to go to are Spa and Brazil. Those are the upper echelon of F1 tracks. Brazil, because it's never a bad race in Brazil. It's never a boring race in Brazil. Whenever people ask me what should I rewatch Formula One, I always say, pick any year, watch Brazil. Any year. 2007, 2008, banger. 2016, banger. 2012, banger. Even 2022, where it's kind of boring or whatever, it's not. I've heard people say Brazil 2022 is the most boring Brazil in the last 10 years, which I don't think is accurate. But also, it's boring because George Russell is just, anyway, that is not boring. You think Max Verstappen not giving Sergio Perez 6th place after he's already won the championship is boring, then you just don't know how to have fun. Anyway, dream tracks, Suzuka, been there, Brazil, and Spa. That's all I have for this week. We will reconvene between sessions. Oh, I didn't even talk about Bahrain testing. Okay, quickly. Honestly, watching just the last hour, only having the last hour of testing made available to me, I just don't know what's going on. Obviously, there are journalists on the ground. We have boots on the ground journalism. There's good stuff coming out, but I just don't know what to make of anything. Sure, Kim instantly had the fastest lap, but does that mean anything? He also did the least amount of laps, I don't know. The only other thing that I really noticed was Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton causing red flags on the same day. And all I could think about is, wow, former teammates that cause red flags together stay together. That's all. We'll reconvene between sessions.